Hi, I'm Randi Roberts, executive and career life coach. And I'm all about helping you to be more successful and more fulfilled in your career. And super excited to have you join today or watch this later, because obviously the topic of networking appeals to you, is important to you, hits your radar screen in some way. And that's what we're going to focus on today is networking and what does it mean and how can we take it on and why is it even important and all the things. And I've been socializing the topic a little bit with clients in the last week or so. So we've got some questions that were posed for me we'll cover at the end, and I think you'll find value at some point in this. So I appreciate you paying attention. Just getting over the flu, so I have to apologize a little bit for my voice, but I think we're good. So, what do you think about when I say networking? Like, does it instill fear in you? Do you think that it's hard? Do you think it's self serving, which might not feel good? Do you think it's just a waste of time? It might be, I don't have a reason I need to network. It's something I can do later. Like, when I started thinking about the topic and the importance of this, what I realized is how many negative connotations there are about networking. And so what I really want to do is work together today to reframe our thinking about networking, developing a networking mindset, because I can't overstate the importance of it in a career and in success and in fulfillment and in being a leader today. It there are a few things that have surprised me about my journey of running my coaching business, and I think one of them is how much time I spend talking about working on networking with people who are already really successful. So just be open to this, because I really think there's an opportunity for us to put a big positive, authentic, productive spin on networking. So you game? You still with me? Awesome. What if I told you networking could be comfortable? It could be productive. It could actually recharge your energy. It can be done your way, and it even could be easy. Like, you may think that no way, but trust me, it really, really can. And that's what we're going to try and do. Too often we think about networking as an event, as something that we do when we need something. And really, a helpful way to think about this is an ongoing process. It's something that we invest in as part of our career, as part of ourselves as leaders, who we are. It's about giving as much as receiving, which can really unlock a permission structure for all of us. And it can be about forming and leveraging really meaningful connections over time, rather than something that's just really transactional in the moment. And again, it really helps us to strengthen our leadership. So let me prove my point. I tend to be a person who, like, my mind works sort of systemically with, um, think about what's the strategy behind what we're doing? What's my operating plan? What's my action? What are my feedback loops? So I want to sort of break it down from that perspective. And let's start with our strategy and planning. And this isn't a big event. Those of you that manage businesses, the thought of strategic planning is a huge animal in and of itself. It has its own gravity. That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about getting grounded in, why are you doing this? Why is networking important to you? So think about, what's your desired outcome? What's your reason for even thinking, maybe I need to be undertaking this? It could be, kind of a starting point of it. You're considering a job search. It's a great reason to do it. It could be to set the groundwork for a future job search. But it could also be just staying tapped into the industry and the state of the art ideas. When I was in the corporate world, like, I was lucky. I worked with some great companies. But one downside, I think, was we sort of operated as though we were the world, that the beyond our walls, literal and figurative, there wasn't a lot out there. Everything we needed was inside. And I would say that that's not true. There are so many good, refreshing, bright, state-of-the-art ideas out there, and networking is a way to make sure you stay tapped into that. And another reason maybe to do networking, maybe you're a person that likes to help other people. I promise you have a lot to give. And that can be a way to stay motivated about it, is look to give as much as you get from networking. So get clear on what's your desired outcome here. What's your purpose for taking this on? A good way to think about this is if you get really good at networking, what will be different? What will be different? What will you have in your resources, your toolkit, your skill set that you don't have now? So thinking that through can help you get to that desired outcome and get you clear on why it's even worth the effort, because it will take a little bit of investment in time. Another thing to think about in terms of the planning is, how do you like to do things? Are you a person that gets motivated by like really involved spreadsheets and color coding and codifying things and all of that? Then go for it that way. But if you're not a person that is motivated by that, make it much simpler. I do recommend some sort of a tracking system that can be a super simple spreadsheet, just as who have I contacted? What was the last point of contact? What are my follow up notes? Is there a date that I want to be doing something next? It's just a way of tracking what you've done. It's both because like, whoa, look at all I've done. Like you can really give yourself credit for it, but it's just a really easy way to track back to a conversation that you had that you may want to follow up to. Sometimes my personal notes are, this person's son is getting married in October. It's nice to remember that, maybe reach out to them about it. Or it could be they have connections at these other places, or that kind of thing. We think we'll remember. Trust me, you won't. It's just worth taking a moment to track it simply. But make it fancy and pretty if that's what does it for you. Do it your way. Okay, then setting the stage for this as part of the strategy and planning process. What you want to do is you want to think about building a diverse network. And you may feel as though, well, I work for this one company. I've only been in this one industry. That's okay. Take an inventory of all of the sort of stakeholders or you know, factions in your world. If you think about, like, I go to my own background. Okay, I've worked for 3 big companies. I've worked for 2 small companies. I've run 2 of my own companies. I went to business school. I went to undergrad. I do volunteer work for Battered Women's Service, for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. I've been on boards. Like, if you start thinking about, religious affiliation that you may have, something through your kids, when you start brainstorming, you have a lot of points of connection in your world. So it goes beyond just your industry. You don't have to tap into all of these, but there's way more available to you than you may think. You may be limiting your own thinking. So I would say build diversity into your network thinking. So you may want to start with a brainstorm of what all those things are. Another way to set the stage is to think about what tools you have at your disposal. I mentioned a simple spreadsheet. Just in general, I would say use your digital tools wisely. I'm a huge believer in LinkedIn. I think it's an excellent professional networking site and is really useful for, there are some professions that don't, like, I've talked to lawyers that I've had clients that are lawyers. Maybe legal profession isn't so much there. There are others, but in the corporate world, to a great extent, LinkedIn is a real hub for you that can make it super, super easy. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to have the most shiny, attractive profile. There's certain things you want to say, of course, but you don't have to be posting all the time if that's not your jam. You can comment on other people's posts. That can be as easy as acknowledging accomplishments and achievements of others. That feels good. People like hearing it. It gets you engaged. Read other people's stuff and comment on that if it makes you think about something. If you just appreciate the time they took to do it, just make a quick comment. That makes a difference to speaking as someone who spends time creating content there. It makes a difference when you hear that it impacts people. And another easy thing to do is share something that somebody else posted that may be thought provoking. You could put a quick comment at the top that just said something like, I spent 5 minutes on this and it was really worthwhile. I wanted to share it. It may be as simple as that, But doing those kinds of things helps you show up in other people's feeds, helps you start to see more of their stuff, and is an instant, easy networking opportunity. I mean, you can message through LinkedIn too, but you may not even need to do that. Another way to use LinkedIn that some people don't think about is who are your connections connected to? So there's ways of searching. This is not a LinkedIn course, but there's ways of searching secondary and tertiary connections. And, one example that comes to mind for me, I had somebody who reached out to me I happened to be friends with. She had her eye on a job it was a sales position, so it was geographically located. She knew she was the perfect person for the job. There was somebody that led that sales force she wanted to connect to. She did a secondary search, saw that I was connected to them, called me, happened to be a good friend of mine. I'm connected to a lot of people I don't know. This happened to be a good friend of mine. I texted him. I told him she was the right person for his job. I asked them to connect. Bottom line is she's been working happily there for probably 5 years now, and I did a good thing for both of them. So I felt great. It was really easy for me to do, but it was a brilliant way for this friend of mine to help navigate what she needed. Easy to do, and I was happy to help. So use those digital tools wisely. They make it really, really easy. Okay, so that's a little bit about the strategy and planning. Let's talk a bit about managing your mindset because this is a big one when it comes to networking. I mentioned before permission structure. We need to give ourselves permission to put what we want out there, ask for what we need. So basically, what that means is get out of your own way. So sometimes we can sort of, come up with some ways that make it easier for us to do that. I honestly believe that networking is tied to leadership. So if you are someone who sees themselves as a strong leader, aspires to be a strong leader, or even better leader, think about networking as a way to serve that goal. Your ability to cultivate relationships directly impacts your effectiveness as a leader. Leadership is about influence. So cultivating those relationships serves your ability to influence. Trusted networks can provide insight, support, influence. People see you as a person they need in their world because you can help be a connector. So, really, by defining it as not something that's self serving, but something that serves you as a leader that impacts others, sometimes can be what unlocks your ability to just dive in. A great way to think about this, an important aspect of this mindset, is to shift your thinking from transactional to relational. Meaning this is not just about I need a job today, I want to call that person today to get that opportunity. That's not a bad thing to do at all, but sometimes we hold ourselves back because it feels self-serving. When you think about it more long term, when you think about it more from a relational perspective and a mutual benefit perspective, it changes things because it might be a outreach not with a specific request. It's just, "I haven't talked to you in a long time. I wanted to connect with you," that kind of thing. Most of the time, people are really happy to hear from you. I can tell you from my own experience. I mean, I mentioned I've been with 3 companies. I've been on boards. I have a really good network. Then my world changed. I did a whole career pivot and started my own business, and you gotta believe how important my network was to me in getting my business off the ground, but I had to have the courage to get out there and ask, to use my network and ask, and it has made all the difference. I am really proud of the business that I've built, and it's based on my network, and that's part of why I'm so passionate about it. I see the benefit it offers both for entrepreneurs like me, but also for people in the corporate world or people considering all aspects of that. So don't think about it from a transactional perspective. Think about building a genuine relationship over time. So that's not about needing something today. That's about the connection, the idea sharing, the learning what's out there. You never know what's going to come of this, what you're going to be able to give and what you're going to be able to get. And that leads me to another mindset point, which is leading with generosity. A lot of times when I talk to clients about networking and they're like, "What am I gonna say? How do I get started?" It's really helpful to think about asking what you can do to help them. Now, sometimes that naturally comes in at the end, but always include that as part of the conversation. If you're calling and asking somebody for ideas or connections, it might be to a job, it might be to a vendor. Do they have a resource that they recommend for a certain need that you have? Always ask what you can do to help them. You never know. They may have a connection. They may have, hey, I never thought about that. I'm looking for a supplier to provide this or whatever. So that can help shift your mindset of there's going to be mutual benefit here and unlock that if it's feeling self-serving and you're holding yourself back from that regard. And then give yourself permission to ask for what you want. This one sounds easy. It isn't always. Be clear on what it is you are hoping to get out of the interaction. If you're building a relationship, there may be times where that point of contact is transactional. There's something specific that you want. Give yourself permission to ask. Sometimes by feeling uncomfortable about asking for something, we bring weirdness to the interaction. Just be clear on what you want and ask. Trust that that person has agency, can use their words, can express themselves whether they want to do it or not. If you are willing to hear no for an answer and your request is reasonable, there's almost no reason not to ask. And then you respect what the other person says. If you're sensing that they're uncomfortable, you can react to that, but don't make them uncomfortable by asking in a weird way. It's remarkable how often we do that. Okay, so that's a little bit about mindset. Let's talk about putting some of these practices in place. One of the big things is to think about networking as a habit. Build it into a habit. This is not an event. This is an ongoing process. If it's done, I'll say well, but certainly if it's done easily, because you're not going to have to stress about what am I going to say? Is it okay to ask for this? This is just what you do. So integrate networking into your daily and weekly routines, whatever that works for you, rather than waiting for like a specific event or a career need. The best time to network is when you don't need it. So, um, make it part of your process. If you're a person that really responds well to goals, and I am, I run my own business. I will set challenges and contests for myself even. I know I respond well to that. So setting a goal of 5 outreaches a week or whatever that is, if that motivates you, do it. And, it gives you some accountability. You could even build in accountability with another person, that kind of thing. Know what works for you and put that in place so that you get going and it makes it easy. And when I say 5 outreaches a week, that's arbitrary. You will know what the right number is. And that doesn't mean one a day unless that's what works for you. That might mean you carve out 30 minutes at some point during the week and you shoot a few emails, texts, LinkedIn messages, whatever that is. Maybe even pick up the phone and call. I guarantee you, if you reach out to 5, you're not going to hear back from all 5. So what? Do what set yourself a goal and do that goal. And then you can evaluate whether it's the right goal or whether you need to be reaching out in different ways. Usually I try and start with how do I communicate with that person? If this is a text relationship, I go that way. If it's not, I go email. LinkedIn message is like my last resort, only because you don't know when they're there and you don't know it's actually getting to them. But it is a good way to reach people. So I don't mean to discourage it. It's just not my first go-to. And then I would say, think about leveraging your everyday interactions. Like networking happens in meetings, in casual conversations, in social settings. It's not just in formal situations or when you're intending to network. And this can be a little bit harder in a virtual or remote world. Now, obviously, the world is opening up quite a bit, but you may have to be a little bit more purposeful about it in order to make that happen. It's part of the planning and having an intent behind this. So leverage your everyday interactions, and then it feels more natural too. It's amazing how often you might be at your kid's soccer game and you meet somebody, and having that conversation, and there's points of connection. All that stuff counts. Another thing that I'll say about your process is follow up and stay engaged. Relationships, if you're thinking about this as relationships, even casual networking relationships, they require a little bit of nurturing. Quick follow-up note. If you found an article that you think would be of interest to them, send it to them. Congratulatory message on accomplishments or whatever. Those things just keep the connections alive. Celebrate your, things that you see on LinkedIn that come across. If it's work anniversary, I tend not to pay too much attention to those, but other accomplishments, degrees, promotions, things like that, comment on those things. It feels good to people and it's a nice way to connect. Now, having said that, if you haven't talked to somebody or been connected with someone for a long time, so what? Better to reach out now than to not reach out. And this is a lesson I learned when I started my own company. I was like getting all in my own head. I can't go out to that person for referrals. I haven't talked to them in 10 years. Well, why can't I? And you'd be amazed at how often someone was really happy to hear from me and excited to know about what I was doing. Whether they could help me, whether they wanted to help me, that was a different question. But they were happy to hear from me. And, think about people that you've known in previous lives. It's nice to know that they're doing well. The contact may not go any farther than that, but it's usually positive. Sometimes you won't hear back. Don't get all up in your head about that. They might not have gotten the message. They may have seen it and thought that they'll respond to it later. Maybe they don't want to get back to you. Okay, we can live through that. But don't create a story in your head that you don't know has any basis in truth if that's going to hold yourself back. It's no harm done. It's a message sent, either received or not, and you go on from there. I promise you can live through it. I have. I actually did have one negative response in all the years that I've been doing this, one. And if you want to hear more about it, get in touch with me. I'll tell you the story. It's not that interesting, but it stands out because it was one. Okay. Let's talk about the next thing, like putting networks into practicing. One of the things that helpful from a mindset perspective, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself, to redefine yourself when it comes to a networker. You may be thinking about yourself as someone who, I'm not good at this. Again, amazing how often I talk to really successful people and they define themselves as someone who's not good at networking. Well, don't tell yourself that. You don't have to believe it. You could change it. Don't tell yourself that. Redefine yourself in terms of networking. Maybe you choose to develop a reputation as a connector. Like introduce people in your network to each other. I had someone, I'm doing the keynote speech program. I met a really interesting woman through that. And she just connected me with someone else. She said, I just think the two of you should know each other, be in each other's orbit. I looked into her stuff a little bit. She's got some really thought-provoking work out there. I really appreciated the connection. View yourself as a connector and see what you can do to help others. I mean, it feels great to help other people and they appreciate it. Or it doesn't do any good and they don't get anything of it, and then so what? A person that comes to mind as a connector, a good friend of mine from graduate school. I've been friends with her for 25 years. She is the ultimate connector. She takes it on like she wears it as a badge. She takes it on really actively. And it's cool because if I am trying to think about an approach to networking or brainstorm somebody that may know somebody else or whatever, she's a person that I call and just she's always got something to say that makes me think about it in a different way. She defines herself as that. The rest of us could define ourselves as that if you feel that that's something that unlocks this for you and will enable you to give back to others. So, networking is anything but collecting phone numbers, email addresses, making sporadic appearances at industry events. That's not what it's about. It's a leadership discipline. It's a process that requires care and feeding, but not a lot. You can do it in your way. And when you shift from that mindset from I need something now to I'm building meaningful relationships for the long term, you unlock a whole world of opportunities. You really, really do. Just commit to making networking a part of your leadership DNA. Make it easy and then like watch what happens. If you really commit to it and you watch what happens, if you start to see benefits from it, it feeds itself And it's yet another way that you are providing a really wonderful example for the folks that you're trying to lead, influence, grow, uh, you know, uh, all the good things. So hopefully I've convinced you that this can be easy and painless and really beneficial. So, a couple of questions that I've gotten from folks when I've talked about this topic over the last couple weeks. A big one is around it feels like a huge lift to get started. How do I start? You just start. Break it down into one thing. Like, think right now, if you're thinking that this is something that would benefit me to be doing, think about two people that you can reach out to today, this week, to connect with. Easy people, people that you've been really close to in a past life, people that you work with now that you haven't talked to in a little while, who are two people that you can reach out to. Just how you doing? Wanted to connect. What's up in your world? Can I do anything to help you? Two people. That's how you start. And you'll see that you live through it. And then you go from there. So, that's really a matter of you're in your own way. The good news about that is if you're the problem, you can get out of your own way. You can be the solution. Another question I get, it's not really so much a question, it's more a worry. This feels so selfish. I'm calling them because I want something. That may feel especially true if you're in a job search and you're feeling like you really need some help. Okay, so own that. It could be, first of all, how would you feel if someone asked you for help and you were in a position to help them in some way, or at least just provide some support? You would probably want to do that. So you're giving someone else the opportunity to help, to feel good about that. That's one way to think about it. The other thing is, if you have a request for someone and you haven't talked to them about it in a long time, own it. The conversation could be around, we haven't talked for so long, and I actually do have a favor to ask you, and I'm so happy to have a reason to sit down and call you because I think about you all the time. And then make sure that somewhere in that conversation is, what can I do to help you? And then if that was a satisfying interaction, if it felt good to connect with them, keep it going. Make it intention to continue to connect from a relationship perspective. The other sort of theme around the question that I got was, well, what if they don't respond to me? What if I don't hear back? What if they want to hear from me? Okay, that could happen. That happened to me once. I lived through it. I tried to learn from it, actually. What it does happen quite frequently, though, that you won't hear back from them. Don't make that mean anything. They might not have gotten your message. They might be busy. They might be thinking about something that they want to tell you, and then they forget. Don't make it mean anything. And one of the biggest lessons that I personally learned through about networking is if you don't hear back from them, reach out to them again. It's amazing how often, like, I have gone through very structured periods when I was first building my business of outreach to try and get referrals. And I had a process of reach out once. If I didn't hear back, reach out again. If I didn't hear back, the third outreach was, hey, just want to let you know, don't worry about getting back to me. We're good. Like, you're off the hook kind of thing. That was just a way of me putting closure on it and making it okay to reach out to them again in the future and making it okay for them to reach out to me. And there wasn't any weirdness out there about like unfinished business. You'd be amazed at how often I heard back on the third outreach. So just give yourself permission to do it. Just if you're in your way, get out of your way. Okay. So I've talked a lot about networking and I really appreciate you hanging with if you're still here. I feel confident and hopeful that there was something of value at some point, even if it wasn't all of the discussion. And the thing that I want to challenge you with is, who are those two people you're going to reach out to as a result of this conversation to get yourself started? Even if you want to do one of those pretty spreadsheets and big strategic plan around this, great, do it. But don't let that hold you back from starting. Call two people and let me know how it goes. Thanks so much.